In the tiny lavatory at the back of the aeroplane, I tried to put myself back together before we landed. As though cosmetics might make me the girl my family remembered, I touched a little gloss to my lips. I had the sense that no matter what I wore or how I did my hair, the baker would be written on me forever. And I wondered whether my family would think I couldn't ever be the woman they wanted me to be. With Christian's help, little had been left to chance regarding my return. I wore the dress he bought me, the coat, and the shoes. He reminded me of all those manners and traditions that I had forgotten. The rest, unfortunately, depended on me alone. They'd once been proud of me. I remembered that well, not in the dramatic way strangers imagined proud families to be, but in the quieter manner of people who expected much and were pleased to find those expectations met. My grandfather attended all my recitals and afterward showered me with flowers and jewellery. He had a smile for me and told anyone who would listen how my instructor said I had fine feet for ballet. There'd been music examinations and French lessons, so I'd not disgrace myself when abroad. Stacks of books were tucked onto every shelf in my room. I'd been cherished, which is not the same thing as being indulged, though there'd been a fair amount of indulgence too. Would they still be proud when they saw what had become of me? How I survived only because I wanted this day with them so badly. The thought made my stomach turn so violently that I had to grip the basin and close my eyes to keep the room from spinning. But then a knock sounded against the door. "Grace," Christian said from the other side, "we're beginning our descent, so we must buckle in now." He was waiting by the wall when I opened the door, and as soon as I stepped out, he took my arm. There was a look on his face I knew well, the slight narrowing of his eyes and the faint line between his brows that told me he was as worried as I was. "Are you all right?" he asked. I had a laugh at myself and shrugged as he guided me past the couch I'd been sleeping on. "Only a bit nervous." For a moment, he only looked at me, and whatever he found, he chose not to question. "He is your grandfather," he said as he led me to my seat. "Just smile, and his heart will be yours again." When we came back, Cyril folded the newspaper he had been reading and set it on the table between the seats before he fastened his seatbelt. "If you are feeling up to it week after next, we could meet at Wembley for the Cup final. I think it would do us all good to spend a day thinking about something of no importance at all." As we came in to land and the engines began to quiet, Christian fastened his belt and reached for my hand. "If I am able to pry her away from her grandmother, we shall join you," he said. The wheels struck the runway hard enough to jar me where I sat as Christian's hand tightened around mine. We went on like that for a time, the engines loud around us, until at last the speed began to ease and the aeroplane turned and started to taxi. By that hour, it was fully dark and the windows were faintly damp at the edges. The airfield lights stretched in long yellow lines across the tarmac, while figures in reflective coats moved through the brightness and shadow. Other figures were already making their way towards the aeroplane, indistinct behind the glass and the misty night. I understood who they would be, of course, but knowing it and seeing them come were not the same thing. I didn't realize at first that Christian was waiting for me to stand until he pulled at my fingers. "Come, my darling," he said. "We must not keep them waiting." He went on ahead of me with his case and the smaller bag set upon it, and I followed with my tiny little handbag, containing only some pins and a few tubes of lip stain. The cold struck me the moment I came near the opening, and I remember thinking only how England was colder than Hearthwick. Just as the men below pushed the staircase to the door, Cyril leaned a little nearer from behind me and spoke over my shoulder. "I shall take my leave of you here then," he said. "But it was my great pleasure to meet you, my lady, and I do hope to see you again soon." I looked back enough to see his face. "And I you, Cyril. I shall look forward to meeting your family when we come to London." Then we went down the steps, Christian leading me. I was careful where I put my feet, not because the steps were difficult, but because I began to understand that my grandfather was waiting below, and once I reached the ground, I'd have no more time to prepare myself. My grandfather grew old, of course. His hair went silver, but the white streak at his widow's peak remained, the same as mine, and he was still the handsomest and best-dressed man I'd ever seen. Lord Ashcombe stood beside him as well, so much like Christian, only older, with grey in his dark hair and the same air of perfection about him. My grandfather stepped forward into the light as I came down the last step. His face changed then, as though he had only just realised that it was me. "Oh, my beauty," he said as he stepped closer. Such a silly thing, but for a moment I didn't know how to respond to him. He was a stranger to me now, and yet I remembered that he'd once doted on me, even though in our world such things weren't simple, particularly not before others. I couldn't tell whether I ought to wait for him, or run into his arms as though I'd never been gone at all. Then Christian urged me forward, and I understood what was required of me, but I'd only just begun to go to him when he came to me instead, his arms already open, and they closed around me the moment I was near enough. Oh, my sweet Gracie. It was the scent of his menthol aftershave that undid me, because it was the same my father wore. I held him tighter, trying to breathe it in again, because for a moment it brought my father back to me more clearly than any memory had done. "Thank God," he said into my hair. "Thank God, thank God." He drew back a little so he could reach for Christian, catching him by the shoulder and drawing him nearer to us. "I shall never forget this, Christian," he said. "God bless you." A part of me wanted to laugh because I understood how uncomfortable such open displays of feelings made Christian. And yet I also knew grandfather's gratitude was worth more to him than he'd ever show, because Blackmere had always meant a great deal to him. "Thank you, sir," he said to him, and laid his hand on grandfather's arm. "It was my pleasure to do so." Grandfather remembered himself, clearing his throat and straightening, and he was once again the gentleman the world expected him to be. "We should go on," he said, his embrace on me loosening. "Everyone is waiting for us." His hand came to my back as he turned towards the building and led me with him. We weren't the sort of people who touched unless necessary, at least not where anyone might view it. Affection was shown in other ways, in the things given, in the care taken, in the way they arranged one's life so that you never had to be afraid of what might happen next. It was not a loud sort of love, but it was most certainly love. It was also in the expression on Henry's face when he shook hands with Christian. There was nothing obvious in it, and yet his whole face seemed to brighten with pride that his son returned with me as he swore he would. And I knew how much that meant to Christian. He only ever wanted his father's acknowledgement that he'd done his duty well enough, though he would never have asked for it and would show no grand feelings now that he had it. Once we were inside and out of the night's dreariness, grandfather stopped suddenly, and I turned to him to find out why. He looked at me as though he didn't trust his own eyes, so when his trembling hand touched my cheek, I thought maybe he only wanted to be certain I was truly there, even now, and I knew he meant I love you. Men like him didn't say such things, but he didn't need to. The mist in his old blue eyes told me, and it was louder than anything he could have said. "Welcome home, my darling Gracie," he said as we went on together down the corridor again. And I found I wasn't so afraid of what was to come anymore.